Yes, my dear. I wanted to ask you something. You see what happened between Abigail, Nabal, her husband, and King David. So, how can we balance her assertiveness without Nabal's knowledge, with Paul's instruction for wives to submit to their husbands in this era? How do we balance the whole thing? Because if you read the Bible, the scripture of 1 Samuel chapter 25, it's explained how everything happened, how Abigail, you know what happened now?
Yes.
Nabal, what Nabal did to David and his men.
Yeah.
So, and he was coming to take his life and that of his household. So Abigail got to hear the whole thing and went behind her husband with some things that she gathered to meet David. Okay. When she got there, she bowed before the king.
Yes.
Okay. Honored him and pleaded on behalf of her husband.
Okay.
She actually called her husband foolish and all that. So I'm asking, do you think in this generation that if a woman should take this act, this particular action,
yes,
that it will be pardoned? Do you think that it's part of submission? It's part of submission to have gone behind your husband. Maybe you married a foolish husband, or maybe your husband did something out of ignorance or carelessness, and you're trying to watch out for him, and you have gone behind him to a fellow man
if I understand
to plead on his behalf.
A fellow man, let's not just say a fellow man.
A superior, someone who is like a superior, yes, to that her
David
husband.
Was the Lord, he was the king of at the time when the story of Nabal and Abigail happened. So you know, like the era, David was actually the Lord. He was the king. He was the strongest man in his times. Do you understand? So your question now, if I should understand it clearly, is how to reconcile submissions of recent times, right?
Yeah. And
the actions of Abigail, because then we see that Abigail went to King David and bowed to him and appealed, and even called her husband foolish and said a lot of nasty things about him. Okay. Now, what I want to say is that submission is deep. It's deeper than what people think it is in recent times. What Abigail did was actually submission. The real submission, and I'll explain to you how. Submission actually means you giving your all, giving your life, laying down your pride, laying down your ego, setting yourself aside, whatever it will take for you, in order to save, not just to save the life of your husband, to save the life of your husband, his livestock, his household, everything that has to do with your husband. That's where they call a wise wife. Only a wise woman that builds her home. It would be foolish of Abigail to have not done what she did, because
her own life will also be at stake.
She would die. Everything that surrounds her husband, every livestock, everybody, servants, everybody who was the staff, who was worker, was going to die.
Then I'm going to ask if
was going to slaughter everybody because he was angry. Let's get to the story here now. Like, Nabal was selfish and greedy. Do you know why I said so? Because we're talking about the king who secures, who protects the city, who in fact his security guards watch over the city that the enemy does not invade. You understand? So if the king's people or the king's servants come to you and say, oh please, we want water to drink, for an example, or we want meat to eat,
you should gladly give it out.
The least you can do, the least you can do is to actually give. And that's where we talk about men who are wicked and senseless. Do you understand? Men who are wicked and senseless, they don't understand, because of their level of greed and selfishness,
how it can affect how
it can affect everything around you. You do not need anybody to ask you. For example, now it is the time of David, but now there's something we call gatekeepers. When you see gatekeepers, they don't need to be the king. It just means these are the leaders of this particular area. These are the head of this particular place. You need to respect them and pay homage to them. Submission is not only for women, it's for men too. Yep. Men have to learn how to be submissive to their superiors. You understand? They are superiors. And any man who cannot be submissive to his superior has nothing to be requesting of submission from anybody.
Yeah.
Because
so
even the Igbo people say, how do they even say it? It says onye fe eze ruyaka, which simply means if you serve the king, kingship would also be accorded to you as well. Do you understand? So imagine if Nabal himself took things, took fruits, took goat meat, took whatever it is, fruit and everything, and went to David and said, please, from my harvest I give to you, which is the wise thing to do.
Yeah, so I have a question now.
So, but Nabal did not do that. Wait, I'm still coming to your question about how to reconcile that.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So, submission is actually what Abigail did. Obedience is what she did not do.
Okay.
Do you understand? She was not obedient, or she did not seem at that point to respect her husband.
It's respect, not obedience, because there was no instruction.
There was no instruction not to go.
So it's respect.
No, but let's say, okay, yeah, because there was no order from her.
So what are you obeying?
Yes, it's not obedience. I think the respect. She had to put the respect aside. And save the life of her husband first. That's wisdom. So in this current era now, any woman who does that should be applauded. You saved your husband's life. You saved your husband from going to jail. You saved your husband from being kidnapped. You saved your husband from being from losing millions of naira, of millions of dollars or euros. That's wisdom. Every husband might be angry at the actions of the wife at the time it happens. But at the long run, the man will come to his senses and say, "Oh, my wife just saved me." Of any woman who does that in this era will be applauded, and we have seen cases. I think there was some time ago, was it a few months ago, a woman narrated a story of how she noticed that her husband was sharing food with a colleague at work, and now decided to be waking up 4 a.m. or thereabout to make food for her husband to go to work. Do you
and they gave them a phone and all that.
Yes. So everybody in Nigeria, every woman in Nigeria applauded this woman for her actions. And a lot of people will be saying, "Oh, woman, I beg, who get time to the week for 4 a.m. to make food?" But do you know that what that woman did? Brought her to the limelight and brought extra provision to her and her husband.
So I have a question.
Yes, please.
Don't you think that there are other ways that women of this generation are doing the same? Like there are some women who would go as far as praying, fasting for their husbands, behind their husband. Their husband don't even know about it. Yeah. So there are some women. Don't you think there are some women who sow in the place of prayer to protect their husband? And then there are also some women who watch in so many ways, like watch the back of their husband, like in so many ways. I cannot really elaborate, but I know there are some other ways that women could be doing this kind of a thing, not necessarily going to, before a king. And that's what I mean. Like there are also some women who have issues in their homes, and they will sought for a counseling from a man of God or a superior or someone who could help, or eldest in the family who could come to make peace in their home. I've seen a lot of places where this has happened and it didn't end well. You understand? Because no man wants to,
Now, if I understand your question clearly, and I'm just going to go straight to the answer, it's wisdom to do that. If you feel like your home is on fire and there is somebody who can quench that fire, any woman can take the incentive and go and meet the person who might help to quench that fire. It's wisdom to do that. But what is not allowed or what is not permitted is when the person's husband says clearly, "I don't want anybody intervening in this situation, or I don't want this particular person coming to my house to solve problems, or I don't want your association with that person, or I don't want anybody coming in between me and my wife and how to solve our issues." If the vision for the man is that him and his wife sort out their problems themselves, and if their vision is that if the house is on fire and there is need to invite somebody, then both of them would have to discuss it first
and decide
on who to invite into their marriage.
So
what women of this generation now do that I hear and see on social media is that they just go against the order of their husband and do it anyways and expect a positive response or a positive returns. Do I make sense in what you just said?
Yeah, making sense.
Because imagine, look at it. Okay, let's take the Abigail for instance. Imagine if Nabal said to Abigail, "I don't want you bowing to King David whether our lives depend on it or not.
So in that case, what happened?
In that case, Abigail
What happens?
is not supposed to go to King David for any reason. Do you understand?
Even when her own life is at stake.
Even when her own life is at stake, all she can do is to save her own life at that moment.
Like leave.
Yes.
If you can run with your children.
Yes.
Instead of disobeying the
Yes.
husband.
Because sometimes men fight war. And sometimes when it's war time for men, they don't care who they are fighting. It doesn't matter how strong that person is, their opponent is. What the wars that happen in this generation, how do you think it happens?
So if
It's
instruction
all
were
male
already
ego
given to
sometimes.
her not to bow to any king, even
Yes.
if this house is on fire,
Yes.
do not involve
Do
anybody,
not involve
then
them,
what
don't
she
quench
can
it,
do
even
at
if
that...
even if it means that everybody will die, even if it will take my life. If he had made a decree and said, no,
Then she would just run.
if I would die, let me die. If never had said that, on top of his foolishness, we would all narrate the Bible differently. We would all say the foolishness of Nabal killed him. You understand?
Yeah.
And his household. We would just narrate.
Innocent people
that
will go down.
And innocent people would die
Child.
out of a man's decision. Well, this is why we actually employ every man to be wise in their dealings, in their thinkings. You understand?
To be selfless. Don't
to
be selfish.
selfless and put your family as priority.
Yeah.
You understand? Because no sensible man would want to put his family in that level of danger that he knows that my wife will be killed, my children will be killed, my livestock will be taken away from me, I will have nothing and all of that, and still stand his
Ego.
grounds. You understand? And still stand his ground and say, "Hey, come and kill me." Even if he knows that the person who I'm dealing with, who he's dealing with, is the king and the Lord and has the authority and the privilege to slay and slaughter him without permission from anybody.
He's indeed
Or
foolish. really.
without repercussion. Do you understand?
Yeah.
So it's not about. I don't think Nabal was foolish per se.
No, his name actually
No,
means foolish.
The name might mean foolish, but what I would say is selfish.
He was a wicked man.
And I would say selfish.
He was a wicked
you
man.
understand? And wicked. Yeah, wicked. You understand? I would say.
Very wicked,
Selfish,
greedy.
I would say. Greedy, I would say. But if it's when we talk about foolishness,
Stingy.
let us
mention
let us
it.
talk about in this recent time. If the government poses a tax, you must pay that tax because it's mandatory. At the time in the Bible when the Nabal issue was happening with Abigail and David, it was not tax per se. It was not a mandatory thing to say. You understand? So it was a request.
But didn't he know that the king he actually have the right to come and take it by himself and just give instruction? Bring this, get me this, get me that. Some kings are like
No,
that.
but then it will not be wisdom on the part of the king.
Yeah.
Do you understand? It will not be wisdom on the part of the guy because it's not yours. So why come and take people?
That's what I'm saying, that a lot of
forcefully?
people like it
Because-
when it's being forcefully taken from them. A lot of
Yes.
people like it. They just prefer that it's being forcefully taken away from them. They don't want to give willingly. You understand? Yeah. And I think he's that kind of man that, come and take it. Like,
But even in those eras in the Bible, a lot of war happened, and this was the things that created that war. The inability for men to quickly accept to give things willingly or give in willingly. That was why
Ego.
Yeah,
Ego of
the
men is
whole
just-
male ego was what warranted a lot of war, fighting, killings at that time.
and it's still happening everywhere.
And it's still happening in this generation.
Everywhere.
You understand? So, but I think the society have gotten softer. Nobody, even if the Prince of or the Queen of England or the Prince of England or anybody comes now, the President of America comes and tells me, or give me your slippers or give me your clothes or this or that. I can say it from my heart, say, okay, take, because I love you. But if I say, no, I don't want, and I don't want to have anything to do with you, it's in my place to say that. If the President of Nigeria tells me, bring this your phone, I know that the President of Nigeria has the authority to tell military, get that phone for me and he'll bring it. But it's still in my place to say no, because we are in a world of democracy. You understand? We're in a world of democracy. So if I say I don't want to give it, it's my right. You understand? And I think this was the right that Nabal was trying to portray at that particular time. But the wise thing to have done in that particular scenario, like I have said, gatekeepers. You understand? Protectors. You don't even need them to come asking you. The wise thing for any man to do is to give these things without requests. Do you understand what I'm saying? But
because this story is really deceiving a lot of people and making them take some decisions, especially women. Like, if Abigail called her husband foolish, Abigail went and defended, and it's actually a lot of women don't understand the difference. They don't understand what she actually did. It's deep. You have to really understand the scripture. You need.
No, she saved her husband's life.
Yeah, it's an act of submission indeed. But a lot of people think it's not.
She gave herself. Do you know?
Yeah, she actually gave her own self.
Let's
because if the king were that angry, she would be the first to go down.
Like, if the king did not take pity on how Abigail spoke to him in terms of being polite, being lovely, being humble,
obedient.
If the king did not sense that, and if he did not melt his heart, Abigail would have been the first
to be slaughtered. Yeah,
to be slaughtered. Do you understand?
Yeah.
Abigail would have been the first.
Her life,
she actually put her life on the line for her husband. So if anything would have happened to her husband,
but putting your life on the line is not submission. So let's not.
No, I'm not. See. Now,
don't go and die for your husband.
Do you know submission in generally is putting your life on the line for somebody? Let's say the truth. Submission on its own is putting your life on the line for somebody. It means you offering yourself as a living sacrifice.
To the person, but not to another person on behalf of you. Do you understand the difference?
To that person. So any actions you will be taking, or any what would I even say it? Any actions you take should speak sacrifice, should speak service. You understand? Submission is simply the act of service. A lot of people do not believe that men can be submissive. You understand? But the service that men do is the act of submission to their wives and their children if they are responsible. Do you understand what I mean?
Yeah, even the Bible said it, submit to one another.
First,
so submission is
submit yourself to one another first.
Yeah.
That it simply means serve yourself, be of service
to each other.
Yeah. You understand? Be there for each other. Sacrifice yourselves for each other. Exactly. Sacrifice for each other.
Yeah.
This is what it means.
Yeah.
It's as simple as ABCD.
But we have actually, a lot of people have argued this. So, if men have to submit.
Men have to submit. Responsible men do submit, because there's a difference. Responsible men do submit to their wives by their responsibilities, by taking their responsibility, by the love, their actions, their presence, their protection, their provision. The women submit to their husbands by the level of respect, the level of service, the level of humility, the level of meekness that they bring, and love and peace and unity that they bring into their home. That's how women submit. So check now what Abigail did was an act of submission, putting herself aside, taking the risk to save her husband's life and that of the house.
Thank you.